Hi, this is Ralph Wilson with Web Marketing Today. I'm here with Bryan Eisenberg, one of the speakers at Search Engine Strategies London. Bryan, you've really pioneered on the internet using something you call personas. What is a persona? Tell us about personas today.
It's a great question, Ralph, and I appreciate spending the time with you, a long-time fan, a long-time reader. Personas are real simply followed on one key principle, which I refer to in our second book, Waiting for Your Cat to Bark, is the golden rule, right? From a religious perspective, we all think the golden rule is treat others as we want others to treat unto us. And the problem with that, in terms of thinking about that from a sales or marketing perspective, is that not everybody's like us.
That's right.
And so my golden rule is, let's cater to the people who have the gold, because right now they rule.
Okay.
Right. And so it's looking at the customers and presenting them in such a way that you can become familiar with them and you can empathize with who they are, just the same way that, you could probably still hear your mom's head in the back of your voice if you're doing something wrong, or your wife saying something if you put on a particular piece of clothing, right? And so what the personas allow us to do is create snapshots of the types of visitors that you get to your website and model them based on the different modes of behavior of how they buy. So we'll have one persona for a site that he's very competitive, very driven, everything's about what's in it for him, very high level, very more assertive type personality. And then we'll have another one that's very methodical, very detail oriented, and asks a lot more questions. And by understanding these different personas, you can start planning out what kind of content you need for each one.
Do you name your personas?
Oh, absolutely. Not only do we name them, and you have to be very careful not to stereotype them, because that's, it's like, we'll do it when I demonstrate it here at the seminar, we'll call them, Henry, humanistic, and Chris competitive, and just because we need people to get the thing in a moment. But if we're actually dealing with a company or working with somebody, we actually want to deliver it so that, if I hand it to someone, you can actually think this is someone's real story. And so not only do we give them a name, but we'll actually give them pictures. We'll write words as if they were in their quotes. Everything you can to just get a sense of who they are.
And perhaps the writer who's writing up the persona is kind of getting it into his or her head so that when they start writing the copy, then they can understand this person well. So in a sentence, what is a persona?
So persona is a representational model for the different types of customers that come to your website.
Okay. And how do you determine what personas you ought to develop?
So generally, depending on what business you're in, it's usually somewhere between 4 and 7 personas. We do take into account some demographics, but that's usually the last piece, kind of just to make them look prettier. Where we start with is psychographics, because since the time of Hippocrates, human beings have always been split up into 4 basic personality types: competitive, humanistic, spontaneous, and methodical. And what we know is, the reason this happens is because human beings are basically split in half, right? We've got a logical side, an emotional side, and sometimes we make quick decisions, and sometimes we're a little bit more deliberate. And so by modeling around those 4, usually we can say, okay, you know what? I know the methodical is going to ask me this kind of question because it's just that level of detail, where the spontaneous doesn't care about that detail, just wants to make sure it's going to look right for them.
Okay. So you determine from the data from your site what kinds of people you've got there, and then, and I suppose you talk to customer service people, sales reps,
everybody who has contact with the company. But we'll also look at things like word tracker and stuff like that, and also your logs, so to see what kind of words people are using. Because you'll also notice in your keywords that perfect diamond and learn about diamonds can't be from the same person.
And so you learn some intent. Okay.
Exactly.
So you've got, say, these 4 personas, and you've named them, and your head is really into who they are. Now, the same website with 4 personas, what do you do with those personas now in developing sales?
So there's a couple of different things. One, you have to know that, again, different personas have different paces, right? And so we're always looking to address the faster paced personas at the top of the page and the more deliberate personas later on in the page, right? So you're going to deal with your spontaneous or competitors earlier on, and then you're going to deal with your humanistics and methodical questions afterwards. It's the reason why headlines need to tell people in 3 seconds or less what it is the page is about, and that first paragraph's got to sum it up. The why, right? Address those quickly, and then you can address the how and the who's afterwards.
So how do you segment then your site so that the methodical people go to the methodical parts, or do you set up the same page to treat all 4?
some pages treat all four, some pages only treat one, some pages treat two, right? It depends on what kind of page, what level of content. But what we're doing is people will be naturally attracted to what they're interested in, right? So we'll use different hyperlinks, different images that we know are going to appeal to different folks. So if we have a hyperlink that talks about our 6-step process, has proven to improve everybody's bottom line by 800%, right? The improve 800% is going to appeal to the competitive. Mm-hmm. The 6-step process is going to appeal to the methodical.
Mm-hmm. So then if this is the first branch, mm-hmm. this might sort of lead them off on a path then even through your site.
Right, remember those books from years ago, the Dungeons and Dragons books that you used to read and says, okay, if you want to slaughter the dragon, go to page 492. If you want to run away, go to... We're essentially kind of doing that, and we're literally planning out the journey that people can take on the website.
So it's not just a landing page, it's a whole path of sales.
Well, but you can start it as simple as a landing page and say, okay, look at it from all four perspectives. Are you addressing all their needs there? To getting more complex throughout the whole site.
Now, you said you want to be careful not to stereotype, but what's the difference between a persona and a stereotype?
So I think one of the great examples of this, and one of the folks who writes on our blog, Holly Buchanan, just came out with a book called The Soccer Mom Myth, right? Everybody likes to believe there's a real soccer mom out there. The fact is, it's a small minority. Not all women are, surprise, surprise, the same.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You've been married about 47 years. You might have learned 40 years. So you might have learned that quite well already.
I've learned something.
Yeah, something about that.
One thing I've learned is I don't understand women.
That's exactly it. So, but she'll tell you that, if you think of every mom as being, in mid-30s, drives that van, takes her kids back, you're not dealing with a realistic.
So I think what I hear you saying is instead of making these up with your stereotypes, get your data and mold these personas from the data.
From the data and make them more real. And so literally, if I handed a persona, and usually they're a couple pages long and sometimes even deeper depending on how much research we do, and I handed it to one of your salespeople, one of your customer service people, they'll be able to say, oh yeah, I spoke to someone just like that last week. If it doesn't pass that sniff test, it didn't work.
So if I write my website for a typical person, it's really written for no one in particular.
When you try to reach everybody, you reach nobody.
So you're trying to reach these personas, and in them, the people like them.
Correct. And what you're doing is, we're really writing for the extremes of the personas, and hopefully by going for the extremes, you're actually capturing a lot in the middle.
Well, thank you for talking with me about this today. I appreciate it. Bryan, tell me about your company and what you do.
So Future Now has been helping companies improve conversion rates since 1998. Like I said, I've written a couple of best-selling books.
The names of your books are?
Call to Action and Waiting for Your Cat to Bark. There's a new one coming out called Always Be Testing later on in the fall. And we publish a very popular blog called grok.com, grokdotcom.
Which I read.
Yeah. And we'll help companies, large and small, do things from conversion optimization, landing page optimization, all the way to helping them plan these more complex experiences.
And a friend and mentor to many web marketers here today.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. This is Ralph Wilson with Web Marketing Today.